Our new government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery is his natural and normal condition. That's Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, explaining in 1861 what the new Southern nation was really about.
Not so subtle. Not states' rights, right? I didn't hear anything about states' rights in there. Not tariffs. He's literally telling us the cornerstone of this new Confederacy is slavery.
Yeah, and in today's episode, we're going to follow that road, which leads from that speech to walk us down to the war that those ideologies, those beliefs unleashed. And we're going to start, though, with the violence of the 1850s, picking up where we finished off last episode. And we're going to move into secession, Fort Sumter. We're going to trace how the war to save a union will become one to destroy slavery and create a new nation.
So before we get to South Carolina walking out of the Union, we've got to rewind just a bit to the Kansas-Nebraska Act and its fallout. Because I got to tell you, that's really the fuse that really speeds everything up.
Yeah, picture Senator Stephen Douglas in 1854. He wants a transcontinental railroad with a northern route starting in Chicago because he was from the great state of Illinois, as am I. And to make that politically possible, he has to organize the last big unorganized chunk of the Louisiana Purchase. And this is going to become eventually the states of Kansas and Nebraska.
So there's one little hiccup here, the Missouri Compromise. Remember the Missouri Compromise, 1820? Oh, yeah. We talked about that a lot.
Hiccup.
You're saying you're doing a hiccup because I said hiccup. Yeah. So the Missouri Compromise said that slavery could not exist north of Missouri's southern border at 3630. Southern senators, though, are sort of like, well, why would we agree to admit all of this territory if it's just going to become anti-slavery states and create new anti-slavery senators in Congress?
But so Douglas has a solution to that, and that is the Kansas-Nebraska Act. It does three big things, okay? One, it creates two distinct territories, Kansas and Nebraska. It will, two, repeal the old Missouri Compromise line that Dr. Garrison talked about, 36 degrees, 30 minutes in that area. And then thirdly, it says, let popular sovereignty decide. Settlers in each territory will be able to vote either slavery up or down.
And that is the key. Anytime you hear Kansas and Nebraska Act, you should think popular sovereignty. And so politically, this is quite a grenade. A lot of Northerners see this as a pro-slavery power grab, that undoing this compromise, this Missouri Compromise from 1820, that everyone thought had settled this question, it really wrecks the second party system, which we had been in. It kills off the Whigs, and now we'll be in our third party system. We'll have a new Republican Party, which is a coalition of former Whigs, Free Soilers, and anti-slavery Democrats, which are united around one key idea, and that's to stop slavery's expansion, but for different reasons depending on who was in that coalition.
So on the ground, this is where things get even more complicated and more disastrous. In Kansas, you had pro-slavery and free soil settlers streaming in to try to win the vote, right? The idea was you get the most people, your people there fastest, and you could win the election. And what ends up happening, though, is you get two rival governments, both claiming to represent Kansas. You have fake elections, constitutions, and ultimately a lot of violence, which ultimately gets the nickname Bleeding Kansas.
Right. So in 1856, you have pro-slavery forces attacking the free soil town of Lawrence, burning buildings, wrecking printing presses. Cats are living with dogs, terrorizing residents. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and one of the craziest parts of it is that when these border ruffians, these pro-slavery, mostly Missourians that rode over, they executed something like 100, 150. Any male over 16 was basically summarily executed.
Ride with the Devil.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, Ride with the
Good
Devil.
film. Good film.
Problematic film.
Yeah.
But
But
good film.
gets at this violence, right?
Yes.
That and John Brown, John Brown, failure at everything in life, responds with brutal vengeance at Pottawatomie Creek. Say that 3 times fast.
Pottawatomie Creek, Pottawatomie Creek, Pottawatomie Creek.
Oh, you did.
Very nice.
Boom.
And he and his band of followers are going to kill several pro-slavery settlers.
With a broadsword.
A broadsword, yeah. And he's convinced that God has called him to wage war on slavery. He's what we would call a zealot.
Oh, yeah, good one. Yeah.
Nice.
Word of the episode.
Zealot.
Yeah. Okay, so this violence is not just going to break out in Kansas, right? It's actually going to lead to all kinds of fisticuffs in Washington, D.C., too. Most infamously, you had Senator Charles Sumner, who was going to stand up on the Senate floor and give a blistering anti-slavery speech. He's going to especially target Senator Andrew Butler of South Carolina, and he's going to imply that not only is Andrew Butler not only does he promote slavery, but he implies that he has some type of how do you say this delicately? That he has relations with his slaves. Basically, it's a double entendre, but everyone gets the gist of it.
Yeah.
And of course this incredibly inflammatory speech is going to lead to Butler's cousin, Preston Brooks, who has to defend his cousin's honor. He's going to walk into the Senate chamber and beat Sumner almost to death with a cane.
You know, a couple years ago at the AP Read, there was
the
a
same
rumor.
thing happened?
Well, there was a rumor that 2 people got into a bit of an altercation, and one of the people had a cane. And so there's a rumor spread. Of course, only the nerds at the AP Read would say, "It's a Sumner incident. We've got a Sumner on the Senate floor."
Wow.
And I just thought, these are my people.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe not so beautiful. I don't know.
I guess not beautiful. But this is a time that's supposed to be of, there's, especially in the South, this chivalrous honor code. And so trying to defend that, Preston Brooks is trying to do that. And I always like to bring this story up when people say, you know what, it's never been worse. Our country has never, ever been worse. Well, there was a lot of violence at this time.
I think the new Ken Burns series that came out, Ken Burns, he was in an interview, he pointed out to that question about when was it so divisive? He said it was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful in the past. So
Well, and after this, I always tell my students that after this event occurred, every day you went to Congress, they were packing heat. Like people stayed armed, after expecting they might have to have a shootout on the floor of Congress.
And this violence on the Senate floor would beget. I mean, the fallout from this is going to be so telling about what's about to happen next. And so Northerners are horrified. They see it as proof that the slave power is violent and lawless, which I guess you could make a pretty good case for. In the South, Brooks, because of this code that you mentioned, Ms. Keltner, gets this kind of hero's status. People literally send him replacement canes. That's textbook APUSH comparison. Same event, totally different regional interpretations.
So by the mid-1850s, it's not just a fight over particular laws, but now it's going to be a whole clash of worldviews.
Yeah, real quick. In the North, you've got abolitionists who just immediately want to condemn slavery and want it to go away and be abolished. Free soilers who say, our major issue is we don't want slavery to continue to expand and ruin opportunities for free white labor. There's this broader free labor ideology that says that in the North, you have social mobility, the opportunity for education. Whereas in the South, that's not possible.
Right, and Senator William Seward will call this an irrepressible conflict between free and slave labor. He argues free labor offers opportunity, like you said, social mobility, and a kind of rough equality, while slave labor creates an aristocracy of big planters.
And this is a really important nuance. This does not mean that the North is racially egalitarian, right? That many free soilers are racist. So being anti-slavery doesn't mean you're anti-racist. And so these people, they oppose slavery spread because they want Western land reserved for free white farmers, not because they envision this multiracial democracy from sea to shining sea.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because this often becomes oversimplified. In the North, they were for equality, and in the South, they were for slavery, and it's much muddier.
Yeah.
Right.
But in the South, pro-slavery really has to double down to protect what it sees as its way of life. So that's where we get the positive good defense of slavery, where politicians like James Henry Hammond are going to insist that slavery is not a necessary evil, as Thomas Jefferson had once described it, but it was actually a blessing. It was a positive good, a system where enslaved people were supposedly, and you have to understand what great lengths
Kind of
they
a stretch here.
they have to go to make this work. But they're going to say that slaves are cared for, that they're part of the family, that in this paternal society, slaves are better protected and in some ways freer than white wage labor in the North.
Right, and this is what we would call historically paternalism. The idea that enslavers are somehow benevolent guardians. It's a myth that helps slaveholders sleep at night while hiding the reality that forced labor, family separations, violence, and the legal non-personhood of enslaved people.
And so by the 1850s, you really see this ideological chasm, right? It's not just about
Did you say chasm?
Chasm.
Chasm.
You know,
Oh,
Chasm.
you know.
we have to
This-
delete this.
Yeah. No, we don't.
Why would you have to delete it?
We have to delete it.
No.
Because you're so embarrassed?
Well, I've just been like doing this a lot lately.
What?
The
Saying
other,
words
the other
incorrectly?
night I was talking about paper mache, and
Mm-hmm.
I said paper machete.
Yeah.
You know, you were thinking about
Thanks
the
for
whole-
laughing.
the whole cane thing. You know, you were thinking more violence, and you're
Man.
like with machete.
It's just that time of year, you know.
It is.
For
It
those,
is.
you know, we should stop here for a sec. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Hey.
Happy Thanksgiving. I'm
Happy
thankful for you guys.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I'm very thankful.
Thankful
you
for the
guys.
pod.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good pod.
So, back to it. It's not just about tariffs and banking policy in the 1850s. Now it's about competing ideas of race, labor, democracy, and who gets to be free.
So then you get a series of explosions. Do we have an explosion button anywhere?
Just
on
just
the,
one
on the-
second.
on the board?
An explosion, like
Go ahead.
I think the best thing we have is the air horn.
How about? Ooh, that was me doing an explosion.
That came from somewhere in the depths.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the noise I make when I think of Dred Scott v. Sanford in 1857. So
Huge case.
kind of big. So Dred Scott, he's an enslaved man who lived for years in free territory, I think in parts of Illinois and Wisconsin maybe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and sues for his freedom.
Right, and so this goes. We should say it is tried in St. Louis at the historic courthouse, which still stands. And Dred Scott wins. He wins, but his owners, or the relatives of his owner, they appeal, and it goes to the Supreme Court. And all of a sudden, we are reminded of just how important the Supreme Court was, and probably always will be, because whoever controls the Supreme Court really controls what's happening in national politics. Because in this case, the Supreme Court is dominated by, I believe, 7 of the 9 justices were from the South. And the Chief Justice, Roger Taney, who's a real piece of work. I
It's Tawny.
think it's Taney.
It's Tawny.
Do you see it? It's
I
T-A.
do-
Finally.
I do
Finally.
hear, you know what? In scholarly circles, I hear Tawny, but it definitely looks like Taney.
It's Tawny.
There's no W there.
Okay, we're looking.
Let's
up.
just look it up.
She was ready to jump on that one.
Let's look it up.
I mean, you got.
We need
We
to
need
make
a
sure
good
that this is exactly like a
Here, go up. You just passed a good
well,
one.
I just want to make
You
sure.
guys, what we're doing is
This-
we're
You think
we're
this-
looking for credible sources.
It has 3.7 thousand views. I don't know if I trust that.
Well, like Ken Burns, so you would trust Ken Burns, so he said it right.
Okay, C-SPAN.
Well,
thought if there was one moment in U.S. history that I'd like to go back and witness, it would be that moment on March 4th of 1861. Okay, because Abraham Lincoln is, of course, going to be sworn in as President of the United States.
Keep it moving.
Chief Justice Roger B. Taney.
I don't know about that. That guy looks like
Yes.
that guy looks like an idiot.
This is a scholar. He's a scholar on C-SPAN. Rhodes College he comes from.
that's in Memphis, kids.
I'm gonna look in. I'll do some. I
Okay,
don't.
you know what?
Unlike
We'll-
Miss Keltner, I don't want to distract, so I won't continue to look this up. I'll do my own research outside of the pod.
Okay.
Roger Taney.
I'm gonna say Taney.
Okay. All right.
So you got Roger Taney, real piece of work, and he writes the majority opinion and basically rejects the case that Scott brings, and the court basically has three major takeaways that any APUSH students out there should be familiar with. One, that black people, free or enslaved, cannot be U.S. citizens. That it just was never written into the Constitution, so therefore they don't have citizenship. He also says that Congress has no power to ban slavery in the territories. So the fact that Wisconsin was a free territory, Taney and the Supreme Court found, that doesn't hold, which opens up the possibility that other territories could not prohibit slavery in the future. And then finally, that enslaved people are property protected by the Constitution.
And Taney, basically,
It's almost like you're taunting him.
Taney basically tries to settle the slavery question in favor of the South. You can't keep slavery out of any territory, is what he's saying. And so instead of calming things, this enrages Northerners and it energizes the Republicans whose sole platform now is stopping slavery's expansion. And I think the craziest thing here is that this totally dehumanizes enslaved people and people of color. It says that you have no right to bring any suit to the Supreme Court or to any court for that matter.
And it really it so minimizes the federal government's power. The Congress no longer in any way, shape, or form controls this narrative at all. So this is one of these turning points. It undercuts popular sovereignty, calls free soil politics into question, and it convinces many Northerners that the Supreme Court has joined a pro-slavery conspiracy.
Right. So on one side, Northerners are thinking that there's a pro-slavery conspiracy. And then on the other side, Southerners are horrified to see that Abraham Lincoln, a former Whig lawyer from Illinois, who had sort of left politics in the mid-1850s because he was so disappointed with what he was seeing in the Kansas-Nebraska Act. He resurfaces, and he's going to run for Senate against Stephen Douglas in 1858. He loses, but because he makes such a name for himself as an eloquent speaker, powerful speaker, he's going to make national news and gain national attention.
And he gives a really famous House Divided speech, and he warns that, quote, a house divided against itself cannot stand, arguing that the country cannot permanently remain half slave, half free. And at this point, he says he won't touch slavery where it already exists, but he's absolutely opposed to letting it expand. And there is a quote from Abraham Lincoln that people like to cherry pick from his debates with Douglas about how he doesn't believe that there can be any sort of equality amongst the races and that he believed the white race was superior. I think it is important to note that he was trying to win an election and
he was in Southern
Illinois, and that's some important context. But I think it also showcases, the political expediency that he was under, and also the way that people can change and be flexible in their thinking as new events arise.
He's complex. I mean, as all political leaders are.
My favorite president. You guys? Where does he rank on your favorite presidents?
He's got to be in the top three.
He's top three,
Yeah.
for sure.
As
As the only Illinoisan in the room. Yeah.
So
I'll claim him.
Agreed.
I'll claim him.
So
Guess we get Truman.
Truman is also in my top three.
Oh, in your top three?
Yeah.
Truman?
Oh,
I took a whole class on Harry Truman.
In your top three?
Yeah, I read 2 huge biographies on him, and you talk about a complex person. Yeah, I just got to know him, and I
agree.
Yeah.
Wow.
Listen,
hey, that's fine.
Where
No
did I go to
judgment.
high school?
Truman High School.
Truman High School?
in Independence,
Independence,
Missouri.
Missouri.
I went to
Where
Jackson.
Harry Truman is from?
By that logic, I should be a huge fan of Andrew Jackson.
Thought you were.
True.
Well,
Things happen. And,
okay, here we are.
Shout out to Jackson again, though. Big football
Yeah,
win last week.
Again.
taking down CBC.
Yeah, woo, woo, woo. All right, so there was Lincoln. So Douglas kind of clings to the whole popular sovereignty thing, even after Dred Scott, saying that local laws can effectively make slavery unworkable. Douglas keeps his Senate seat, which looks like, for the foreseeable future, like a big win for him. But it's Lincoln that becomes the national Republican star, serious, moderate, and principled.
Right. So from the Southern perspective, you've got this Lincoln who is emerging and talking about stopping the expansion of slavery on a national stage. But then it's in 1859 when John Brown, who, as we said, had sort of risen to infamy in Kansas.
He's back.
He's back now. And remember, he believes that God has chosen him to do something tremendous. So he with, what was it?
Probably like 20.
20, 25,
20-ish,
something.
yeah.
He's got a small group of followers, including his sons, as well as other abolitionists, and then several free black men who have signed on. There's this whole background to this too, where a group of Northern abolitionists were somewhat funding him.
Oh, yeah. Harriet Tubman, I think, and Frederick Douglass. And he
Douglass.
had received funding from a few very prominent people.
Yeah.
I think Lyman Beecher.
By Lyman
as
Beecher.
well. Yeah.
I think afterwards there was an effort to sort of hush that. But at the time, he was making an attempt to seize Harper's Ferry, the arsenal there, where there was thousands of weapons, and his idea was let's take these weapons in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Let's give them to nearby slaves, start an uprising, and let's just end slavery with a massive, violent act. And it fails miserably. U.S. Marines under Robert E. Lee will storm in and capture him, and it's over before it really began.
Yeah, and Brown really thought that once I captured this arsenal and word spreads from plantation to plantation, all of these enslaved people will run away from their masters and start a revolt, basically. So he gets captured. He uses his trial to denounce slavery, and abolitionists in the North are going to mourn him as a martyr. But Southerners start to see his support as proof that the North is full of people willing to back violent slave rebellions. And this is where we get into that idea that Southerners really believe there was this conspiracy, this Northern conspiracy against them. And that's continuity and change if we think about it, right? Slave resistance is very old. Mm-hmm. It's always existed, but white Northerners' reactions to Brown are going to intensify Southern fear and mistrust.
That is a very good thing to point out.
Have you guys ever been to Harper's Ferry?
I have not.
No.
Incredibly beautiful.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It is such a cool
Did
town.
you take the ferry there?
I did not.
Okay.
I drove.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you had all these cultural things that are clashing, economic reasons, all of these stepping stones to what would become inevitably the Civil War. Kind of final nail of the coffin here, the election of 1860. The Democratic Party splits. You've got Northern Democrats for Douglas and popular sovereignty. You've got Southern Democrats for John C. Breckinridge and federal protection of slavery in the territories. A third group, the Constitutional Union Party, basically tries to ignore slavery and just save the Union with John Bell.
And then you have the Republican candidate, Lincoln, who is a sectional candidate, is only really viable in the North. And his platform is pretty simple: no expansion of slavery to the West. This old Whiggish idea of protective tariffs to increase internal improvements and a more manufacturing-based economy, but also homestead laws to develop the West for farmers. That's that free soil wing of the party. And Lincoln wins the election, but he does so without a single electoral college vote from the Deep South, and was, in fact, not even on the ballot in all of the slave states except for, where he got the most votes?
I don't.
Missouri. Do you know why?
Because Missouri people are reasonable?
No.
That's a big no.
It was because of the Germans in St. Louis.
Oh,
there you
yeah.
go.
They-
That totally makes sense.
a lot of Germans right across the river in Belleville, and he actually stayed the night in Belleville on at least one occasion that I know of. And yeah, a lot of these German immigrants who were very politically active, as you are the expert on.
Can you imagine seeing Lincoln in Lederhausen?
Yeah, that'd been especially
That'd be
given how
kinda
tall
goofy
he
with
You
was.
would need
Yeah.
some long ones.
Lederhosen and his big old top hat.
Oh my
That would
god,
be
Yeah.
interesting.
I love that.
So yeah,
So-
he doesn't get a lot of votes.
No, 40% of the popular vote. And so he's a minority president. So to many white Southerners, this once again proves this fear of this Confederacy, that this Northern majority can now elect a president who opposes their slaveholding vision. And so within weeks, starting with South Carolina, states are going to begin to secede, not succeed, secede, SECEDE. And that is where the main story really takes off for the Civil War.
Okay, so December 20th, 1860, in Charleston, that's South Carolina, delegates at the convention vote unanimously to secede. So they're going to get the ball rolling. Their official declaration doesn't talk about tariffs or abstract liberty first. It talks about slavery unequivocally and Northern hostility to it. Mississippi will literally say, quote, "Our position is thoroughly identified with the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest of the world," unquote.
Yeah, and those speeches from all of those secession special conventions, those are really the best sources we have to hear from Southerners of why they're doing this.
Yeah, if I always will have said in past discussions, if you want to know why the South seceded, just listen to them.
Yeah,
They'll
listen.
tell you.
Yeah, read their words. And over the next few weeks after South Carolina does this, the rest of the Deep South is going to follow: Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and then Texas. And in February of 1861, delegates are going to meet in Montgomery, Alabama, and they will officially form the Confederate States of America.
Right, and the first thing they do is write a constitution that looks pretty much exactly like the U.S. Constitution, with one exception. They will hardwire slavery and the protection of slavery into their constitution. They explicitly protect, quote, "the right of property in Negro slaves," which is, the whole debate over in the original Constitution was they didn't want slavery to exist. They didn't want it to appear anywhere. This time, the South is in their eyes, correcting that error. And they're going to limit internal improvements and tariffs. So basically, all this is to reflect planter priorities.
Right. And this is where we bring up that Alexander Stephens speech about, well, known as the Cornerstone speech. He tells the audience the old U.S. government had been founded on the, quote, "assumption of the equality of races. But the Confederacy rests on the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. That's not hidden in the footnotes of Southern history. It's front and center in their own words."
Yeah, and across the South, like we were talking about, these pro-secession speakers, sometimes they're called fire eaters, like William Lowndes Yancey. They fan out, giving speeches, warning that a Republican administration will put slavery on the path to extinction. And it's not always quick. I mean, I think we think that, these southern states, all of them seceded very quickly, immediately. And for some, that's true. But for others, it took a very long time. Virginia, in particular, Virginia was
Yeah.
the last, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of speeches had to be made. But again, the words are so important. It's all about continuing the institution of slavery. And all of these speakers, they're going to paint Lincoln as a mortal threat to their racial and economic order.
And Lincoln will argue and make the correct, I think, assessment that a large percentage of Southerners did not want this. They
Yeah.
will sort of be dragged into it by the elite planter class.
Well, because so many of the South were not elite planter classes.
Right, yeah.
And maybe held no slaves at all.
Well, yeah, 75% of Southerners held no slaves.
Yeah.
So Lincoln thinks, well, this is a bunch of rich elites who are trying to protect their interest. And Lincoln was hopeful that if given the opportunity, the non-slave holding majority of the South would resist this. And in some ways, it could have happened that way, but ultimately there was so much influence and power and wealth tied up with the elite planters that they were able to pull their state governments and large chunks of their population into this war. But when people say the war was about states' rights, the question APUSH, for our APUSH students and really our audience in general, you have to ask is the right to do what? And over in secession documents and speeches, the answer is right there. It's the right to hold people in bondage and expand that system westward.
So meanwhile, in the North, you have Lincoln, who is not, he hasn't even taken office yet, and he's trying desperately to hold the Union together, and he's seeing it fall apart. Remember, secession starts actually under President Buchanan.
Yeah, and then Lincoln's finally going to take office in March of 1861, and in his inaugural address, he's going to attempt to walk a very careful line. If we think about the intended audience of Lincoln's first inaugural, it is
Ooh, nice.
absolutely the South. He's talking to them directly, and he says he has, quote, no purpose, directly or indirectly, to interfere with the institution of slavery in the states where it exists, end quote. And so he points out that the Constitution already protects slavery where it is, and he's really trying to, his purpose of his first inaugural speech is to try to quell these fears that these southern states have had since December when they all started to secede.
Right. He really wants to put the onus on the South to make such a drastic move, not necessarily make it. He doesn't want it to position himself as some kind of reactionary figure. He wants to put it on the South to make this big decision. But at the same time, he does insist that the Union is perpetual, that no state can leave on its own, and that secession is immediately illegally void. And he calls on Southerners not to break the, quote, mystic chords of memory. What a great line.
Yeah,
He's
so good.
He really is so eloquent.
Both of his inaugurals are just incredible.
And really his goal is that, look, this is what binds the American people. And he says, look, we need to reconcile. But at the same time, he's firm. We will hold, occupy, and possess, quote unquote, federal property.
So this is when we get into that area of how to proceed next if you are Lincoln, and you have to be very careful here. And he's pretty wily. That last piece is going to be a showdown at Fort Sumter. It's a federal fort in Charleston Harbor. U.S. Major Robert Anderson is running low on supplies. Lincoln decides to send a relief expedition and notifies South Carolina that he's only sending food, not more troops.
And remember that the Confederacy sees themselves as an independent nation now, a sovereign nation. And so Confederate President Jefferson Davis and his cabinet, they see a dilemma that if they allow this fort of the United States to be resupplied, they look weak. But if they attack, they're the ones firing the first shot. And they choose that ultimately. They open fire on April 12th of 1861, and Confederate guns are going to bombard Fort Sumter, and Anderson surrenders after 34 hours.
Militarily, it's a throwaway. It's a small engagement.
We had one casualty, right?
And it was an accident.
A mule.
It was
An
a horse,
accidental
Wasn't it
death.
or a horse or a mule or something?
Yeah.
So an accidental death. Have you guys been to Fort Sumter?
I have
yeah.
when I was a kid. I'd love
Yep.
to go again.
I've been. It was cool.
It's
I
very
really
cool.
You have to take the little boat over
Uh-huh.
across,
Mm-hmm.
and it was cool. So politically, it's symbolic. It's huge. Lincoln now has the reason he needed to call for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion, and once he does that, it's like a domino effect. The Upper South, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina, they decide to secede as well. They'd hesitated, but when Lincoln calls for these troops, and it seems like the federal government is going to have to go through them to invade the Deep South, that's when the rest of the South kind of makes this ultimate final decision to secede.
But Lincoln, he's got some pretty good PR work in here. He desperately wants to keep the border states: Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. He wants them to stay in the Union, though it's going to be messy. In Maryland, Lincoln suspends habeas corpus and arrests pro-Confederate leaders. Habeas corpus meaning what in Latin, people?
To show the body.
Yeah.
Show the body, produce the body.
Produce the body.
You have to be told what you're being incarcerated for
Right.
and charged formally before they incarcerate you. So, in Kentucky and Missouri, there are rival governments and guerrilla warfare, the aforementioned border ruffians that Dr. Garrison referred to. Western counties of Virginia break away, and from West Virginia forms in 1863. So the map of secession is not just North versus South. It's a complicated border region that matters a lot for resources and strategy.
I think that's really important. That's one of the biggest takeaways I had from a Civil War seminar I did with Dr. Gary Gallagher,
Oh, yeah, Gary
like the guy of
GG.
Civil War from UVA. And he said it's not really correct. You shouldn't just say North versus South. That you should really, because of these messy borders, you should really say the Union and the Confederacy.
Yeah, I
And
think
that
that's
always stuck with me.
That's a better way to frame it.
Yeah.
Because it's
There's those layers.
So yeah, layers and overlapping. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we got a lot to talk about with the Union and the Confederacy.
Yeah, great. Well, we've still got a lot to talk about with the Union and Confederacy.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I think we better call it here, and we're going to wrap up the war next time. So thanks for tuning in to APUSH for All. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or YouTube. Leave a review, send us a message. Check us out on Instagram at APUSH for All.
Until next time, keep learning from yesterday to make sense of today.